We have received a question from Mr. Sam Margrave, who's not in the gallery. No, that will be noted. It has been passed around to every member. Mr. Margrave will receive a written response as appropriate. Question number 2, Mrs. Michelle Condon.
Thank you. Many towns have permanent COVID memorials in areas such as parks. The council is planning extensive works to the destination parks in both the towns in the borough. Is the council still considering plans to have a suitable memorial in the borough to those who lost their lives from the pandemic?
Thank you, Mrs. Condon. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Mrs. Condor for her question. The plans are still developing for Riversley Park and Miners Park as we work to refurbish and upgrade them as we go along, which is ably being led by Councillor Guthridge in charge of the Parks Department. He will review the situation as and when, because obviously we do have a budget to stick to, and to see whether it is possible to get it within budget. I'm sure Mrs. Condor and other councillors are aware that the economic situation is challenging for everyone at present, and there are cost pressures on every single project across the country, so we have to be as responsible as we possibly can. But where it is possible, we will endeavour to do so.
Thank you, Councillor. Question item number 3, question from Ms. Nicola Ross. Please, thank you.
Good evening. As a concerned, businesses in the Nuneaton town have great concerns on the antisocial behaviour in the town centre. This is a daily occurrence, and I would like to know what action plan is to solve the issues. Since the new drink shop has opened by the bus station, the situation is unbearable. The behaviour does not encourage footfall into our town centre. With the darker nights approaching, this is very worrying, leaving the workplace for our safety at night.
Thank you, Ms. Ross. Now I'll pass that forward to Councillor Golding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for the question. You didn't clarify it was by the bus station, so my response, based on the question that I actually received, was that it's unclear from the question which town centre and where within that town centre the question refers to. However, on a general note, the council has 24-hour CCTV in place and a public space protection order which allows enforcement action to be taken when alcohol or other substances are consumed which result in ASB. We work in close partnership with the police who issue their own measures to address issues of ASB, and they will continue to do so also. We have and we will remove alcohol licences of establishments should that be necessary. And finally, I'd like to point out that the largest retailers of alcohol in our town centres are most likely to be the long-established supermarkets. It would be helpful if you can contact the community safety team and raise the issues with the community safety team, and also if you've got any references from contact with the police, pass them over and we can work on it for you.
Could I ask a supplementary question?
Is it on the same basis?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms.
Have we got recordings of any arrests on the antisocial behaviour within the ring road this year, and has that progressively got worse as the year's gone on?
I can't answer that because we don't arrest people. That's a police issue. You'd have to actually ask them on their arrest record for that.
Right.
Thank you. Moving forward, item 7, questions by members. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask the leader of the council if he will confirm that this council will continue to be a pro-motorist council for as long as the Conservatives remain in control?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Councillor Evans for his question. And the short answer is yes. It is, whether people like it or not, it is a fact of life that many people, not only within our borough but across the country, rely on the car to do their daily activities, going to work, going to shop, going into town centres, etc. And we cannot ignore the fact that actually our town centres rely heavily for their business and trade, and indeed the market traders Mr Mayor, for people coming in who come in by car. It is an inconvenient truth to some, Mr Mayor, but it is the truth nevertheless. So wherever possible, Mr Mayor, we will endeavour to be as pro-business, which actually means being pro-motorist as we can be in this council. Where do people think that the shops and traders and businesses within our town centres and indeed other commercial estates within England Bedworth get their goods? They arrive by car, by van, by lorry, etc. Without those things, we have no business. Without a business, we have no economy, Mr Mayor. And without an economy, more importantly, our residents have no jobs. So yes, Mr Mayor, we will continue to protect and incentivise people to come into our town centres so that we can breathe life into our economies moving into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Yeah. And a supplementary first. Is that correct? Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Mr Mayor, I thank the Leader of the Council for his comprehensive response. We know that there's an ongoing war against the motorist, and we also know that several Labour city councils have been instructed by the Labour leadership to start introducing ultra-low emission zones. We've seen this in Birmingham, Glasgow and now London. So my supplementary question to the Leader of the Council is this. Should Labour-controlled Coventry City Council decide to introduce an ultra-low emission zone in Coventry, which would see Bedworth residents having to pay money to enter the boundary of the city, will the Leader of the Council use every single weapon in his arsenal to put a fight against that?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't think Councillor Duggins, who is the Labour leader of Coventry City Council, will pay me much attention. In fact, I don't think he likes me very much, to be honest, but he would be the latest in and on queue, Mr Mayor. But Councillor Evans is absolutely right. An ultra-low emission zone is a tax on homeowners, it is a tax on businesses, it is a tax on shoppers, it is a tax on jobs. And that is why, ultimately, residents up and down the country are up in arms about it, and we will not support it, whether it be in Coventry or in Warwickshire, Mr Mayor, and whatever representations we can make to Labour Coventry, then we will do so. But of course, my ultimate message to the residents of Coventry would be, if you don't want an ultra-low emission zone in Coventry, and also to the residents of Bedworth actually, vote Conservative, because we will protect those jobs, businesses and homeowners.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Condon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Under the Constitution, I'd like this issue referred to the Scrutiny Committee, because not a single party is anti-motorist, and the UL, whatever it's called, in London was introduced by Boris Johnson. So I think this does need talking about in the Scrutiny Committee. So can I move this is referred to a Scrutiny Committee? Thank you.
We require a second on that basis. Thank you. And we shall put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against?
Don't you want to talk about it?
I'm not sure it's affecting us. I believe that to be lost. Thank you. Second question. Councillor.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask Councillor Wilson whether he agreed...
Sorry, that's not a question. There's one question now. We've had the question.
Right, okay.
Thank you. Question 2, item 2, we have a question from yourself, Councillor Condicle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've been very concerned by the current administration's reckless capital programme since you took control. It seems the Bedworth Physical Activity Centre is still millions of pounds underfunded, even if we get the full Section 106 payments for developments such as Bedworth Woodlands. Can the Cabinet member explain how the Council is going to pay all the required interest costs on the £20 million hotel, the interest costs on the unfunded part of the Physical Activity Centre, the interest payments on the rest of the planned redevelopments like the cinema, until each project can realistically cover its own costs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Condicorn. Councillor Croft.
Mr. Mayor, just a clarification, so the sound isn't working on the broadcast.
Is that correct? Okay, I believe we've got a problem with the live streaming. It is being recorded. I believe there's an issue with live streaming. Is that correct? Oh, okay. Okay, we apologise, but they will be able to see, obviously, the recorded version now. So can they still see visually, Steve?
No.
Nothing at all?
So our live stream stopped it, and he's put a note on Facebook apologising, so the hard recording will be as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. Apologies. Cool. Sorry, Councillor Croft, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm very sorry to disappoint our public. Councillor Condicorn has indeed long put on record his opposition to the regeneration programme that we're pursuing across our borough, although I'm still amused to this day that his qualms did not extend to try and spend £1 million on windows in this building. Mr. Mayor, first let me address the Bedworth Leisure Centre, and I can't bring myself to call it physical activity, I'm too old-fashioned, I'm afraid. Councillor Condicorn is correct to identify that the Bedworth Leisure Centre was unfunded when we took control, as the previous administration had not even budgeted the full amount for the planning and architectural stages of that project. A throwaway reference in a cabinet report to further funding needing to be identified is not the same thing as a plan. Had we not been able to secure, through Councillor Evans' fantastic intervention, the necessary £500,000 as part of our Levelling Up Fund bid, one of the earliest decisions we made, that project would have died then. You must also remember that the status quo with the current Bedworth Leisure Centre, within a very few short years, will also be untenable, with millions of pounds of dilapidations and repair work being needed to keep it simply operational. To halt the project would not improve our financial outlook. Now, Mr. Mayor, to his comment that the project is currently unfunded, this is untrue. There has always been an element of prudential borrowing to the physical activity of the Leisure Centre project, if you want to call it. The challenge we faced in 2022-23 is the inflationary pressures which have afflicted the global economy, which increased the original borrowing forecast from the 6+5 model to the 6+5+6 problem that I identified at budget some months ago. Given the changed circumstances we face, we've taken the decision to pause the project and reassess. And we have now rephased our timetables and rescoped the designs to bring it closer in line with our original budget, the results of which will come to planning in the new year. Under the new project spec, the forecast split remains as it was most recently reported, which is £15 million of LUF funding, £2 million of Sport England funding, which leaves approximately £12 million of currently projected prudential borrowing, £5 million of which will be against the future 106 monies. We do not forecast that the Leisure Centre project will require borrowing until late next year, so will not take place in the current interest rate environment. We will also capitalise the interest rate in the first year, the interest payments in the first year on this and all of our projects to further reduce the impact on the general fund. The project, once completed, will go out to a contractor to manage along with the Pingles, and this is expected to bring in an income to offset the borrowing costs in future years once the project is live. In terms of the Grace and Plain project, the funding profile is not altered at Abbey Street. We are still at phase 1, and that is all we are expecting to do in 2023-24, with phase 2 still yet to be tendered. Grant funding from the Towns Fund, the Future High Street Fund, Warwickshire County Council, the West Midlands Combined Authority, totalling £16.1 million, has already been secured and will be used first before we go out to borrow. Capital seats of approximately £224,000 and internal borrowing, which is where we borrow from our own reserves and cash balances rather than going to an external lender where we have to pay interest, have been used to fund the project up to the end of this financial year. The remaining balance is currently due to be funded by external borrowing, but it will not all be borrowed at once, and that is subject to the tender process that we are undergoing for the next phase of the project. Now, Mr. Mayor, because of the inflationary and the supply situation I referred to a moment ago, several of our regeneration capital projects are not now scheduled to start or complete in this financial year, which has reduced our capital cost of regeneration for 2023-24. And given that slippage in capital projects, due to the economic situation, we are taking the opportunity to conduct a thorough review on the affordability and viability of our capital projects and regeneration schemes. And as part of this review, we are examining the potential of the government's new Pathfinder project, which will allow us to move funds between projects, because it's quite a restrictive set of grants that we had before. And we are having continual conversations with the West Midlands Combined Authority, Deluxe, Port England, etc., in the aim of getting more funding for projects. I know that conversations have been had with ministers and with government departments at the very highest level. I want to reaffirm, Mr. Mayor, that we will not proceed with unviable or unaffordable projects. Neither the Section 151 officer nor myself as finance portfolio holder will approve them, and we will not shrink from any decisions, however unpopular, to make sure that we are financially viable. Regeneration of our borough and the financial viability of our council are the two principles which we will constantly keep in mind, and we will do whatever it takes to achieve those objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Councillor Collins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Croft obviously misheard me and missed that I said the unfunded part of the cost of the Physical Activity Centre, which I think is the £12 million part. That interest on that would be about £600,000 a year. Can he explain, does that mean it's not going ahead at the moment until we get a government-controlled inflation and interest rates? And does it also mean none of the other projects are going to go ahead because you just can't afford all these vanity projects? Is that correct?
Councillor Croft, respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I rather feel that Councillor Condicle had his supplementary written before he heard my answer. As I said, we will be capitalising the interest in the first year, and we will be examining the rate of repayment as we come to the general fund budgeting process at the time. But we are not anticipating borrowing until the end of next year at the very earliest. So I struggle to see his point there.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Councillor Wright, a question from yourself.
Yes, Matt. With regard to the former Woolworths site, which was due to be taken over by Wilco's, can the responsible cabinet member clarify to the council what the financial implications of Wilco's collapse are likely to be?
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think first and foremost what we have to recognise is the human cost of the collapse of Wilco's, that we have a number of residents across our borough who are at risk, and I think we've all seen in the news, Mr. Mayor, how the situation has been ever changing, and I think our thoughts would all go out to the members of staff who are living in greatly uncertain times at the moment, and their priority will be on securing their future and their livelihood and being able to keep everything, the basics, going. As I said a moment ago, it is an ever-changing situation, and as I highlighted to the Chief Exec today just before Council, it flashed up on my phone actually whilst I was at work that apparently, I think it's the Range, have submitted a £5 million bid to purchase the Wilco's brand, and what that actually means we do not yet know. It's news which has come out today, Mr. Mayor. It is fair to say that we did, in the budget process, put an element of income in for the Woolworths site being re-let out to Wilco's, because at the time we budgeted there was no indication whatsoever that Wilco's was on its way under. No one would have foreseen that 2 months ago, or even when we set the budget in February. And I have to say as well, before anyone gets on the bandwagon saying that the move from its current siting down by the library to where it would be in Woolworths is a contributing factor, that is absolute rubbish, Mr. Mayor. The move was actually fully funded. It was agreed by its new owner, which is the Warwickshire County Council, to move into our site at Woolworths. And so all the fit out and refurbishment costs would have been borne as part of that process. So they would have actually had a better site, I would have said, at Woolworths, right in the heart of the town centre than rather than on the periphery, which would have actually improved their business model here in Nuneaton, Mr. Mayor. And I would suspect, and I've heard anecdotally, that actually Nuneaton is one of its better, or was one of its better performing outlets, because a lot of our residents across Nuneaton and Bedworth and beyond would come in to use Wilko's because it was good value for money. And lots of our residents would need that, particularly in these difficult times that we are facing due to the global economic situation. So we will be maintaining a watching brief on this, Mr. Mayor, because obviously I don't have a crystal ball, I don't know what's going to happen. But as soon as we had the news that Wilko's was going under, myself and Councillor Croft, as the responsible portfolio holders, were in discussions with the Strategic Director for Economy and Transformation, Mr. Shargo, to get in touch with the administrators to see what the implications would be and whether we could get any information out on that. To date, there has been very little information coming out, but it is a fast-changing situation, Mr. Mayor. So as soon as we know anything else, we will try and factor that into the budgetary position and also try and see what that means for the wider town centre, because it is an ecology in our town centre that having good shops helps bring people in, and having good markets helps bring people in, and the two will cross over. So that is the answer in terms of finances, Mr. Mayor, but I think the human cost is the one that I am most concerned about at the moment.
Indeed, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Wilson. We have, as far as we have no items of special urgency. As in item 8, we move forward to item 9. Cabinet report, but before we do so, I must apologise, the cameras aren't working either, as in they're not rotating, which means the speakers will not be highlighted through that, because apparently there's an issue with the computing. Is that correct? Yeah. So that's the case, unfortunately, which means that everybody will just have to look at me and etc. for the rest of the meeting. But thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure it's a price worth paying for residents to hear what's going on, to have to look at your face in the chambers, so I'm sure people will cope. As usual, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to move the report for noting by Council and answering any questions that we possibly can. I would like to draw attention to a few particular items, Mr. Mayor, the big one of which I believe is actually on page 3, which is F, the Borough Plan Review. And I have to congratulate Councillor Smith for pushing the team in planning since he took control to get the review to the position that we are in now, because the inspector told us in 2019 that we should have had a review by 2021. Nothing was done by the former administration to actually get that review underway, and we have had to get that done since we took control in 2021 from a standing start. So to get it to a position where we're actually ready to almost take it to the inspector and have the final consultation, I think is a mammoth achievement, Mr. Mayor. And we also have on the report that we have the new pilot, as Councillor Croft alluded to, from DLUP, which is on page 5 at item 3A, which puts us in the Pathfinder project. We're only one of 10 authorities, Mr. Mayor, where we have actually had funding under all the first 3 levelling up schemes. And this gives us greater flexibility to move money around between projects, depending on whether we keep them going because they are still viable, or whether we move into projects which have a greater strategic importance for the areas that we're trying to do. And actually that would save an awful lot of time, Mr. Mayor, because it is, I have to say, quite a torturous process to get any amendments through DLUP, even for the slightest, smallest thing, and this will give us, from memory, up to 30% flexibility to be able to move funds around between different projects. We also have the fact that we are now in a position to take the physical activity hub through to the next step. Despite all the naysayers, we have looked very hard and very carefully, and officers and cabinet members have literally sweated tears over this to try and get this over the line. It's not completely there yet, but it is moving forwards at a pace which myself and Councillor Markham are looking forward to, and hopefully residents will start to see some movement in the coming months. We also have, unfortunately, it has to be said, the budget monitoring reports. We are still experiencing the effects of the global economic inflation crisis. As I have said many a time, and Councillor Croft has said many a time, but we make no apologies for it, we are not immune. Everyone is feeling the effects and the pinches of inflation, and that means just like every other household across the country, we're having to re-examine our budgets and cut our coat according to our cloth, which we will continue to do, Mr Mayor, in the interest of residents, so that we can continue to deliver those frontline services which residents depend on, which are absolutely essential, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. May I have a second on that, please? Thank you, Councillor Goldman. Any questions? Councillor Conway.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got quite a lot, but I'll tackle one at a time, so that's the easiest. The first one's the Spread of Civic Hall update, which actually happened twice, once on page 2 and once on page 4. If I could ask Councillor Markham to clarify why the council put a press release out saying the bidding process secured a 25-year future for the Civic Hall, when the actual heads of terms actually offered the bidders just 10 years secure lease, with an option possibly of going to 20 years if you had demolished it. So I notified Councillor Markham at the time I had a question over the length and why there was a disparity, but I haven't had a reply, so thank you, Chair.
Councillor Markham, might respond.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. The reason it was left in was because it's up to the applicants to try and negotiate that lease. So it's up to them if they want to negotiate a 25-year. If it's capable by us, we'll do it. But that's why it was left in and not removed.
Thank you, Councillor Markham. You have further questions, Councillor Conway?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The second one is on the borough plan consultation going out, which I can't remember what page it's on. But it's really important, this is for Councillor Smith, that we actually have a better borough plan. And the borough plan's gone out, has a 15% modal shift in it, in all the transport documents. Can Councillor Smith confirm whether the council is going to go for the 15% modal shift, in which case it needs to end its anti-cycling policy, or whether it actually believes the modal shift doesn't work, in which case it needs to revise its transport assessment. So Councillor Smith, if you could clarify whether the council is for the 15% modal shift or against in the borough plan.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the question. We are for modal shift, but we are not responsible for all the highways. That will be down to Warwick County Council. So, as a policy in our borough plan, we will state that we are going for that modal shift, but the delivery of it won't necessarily be in our hands.
Thank you, Councillor. Was there any other questions, Councillor Conway?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The other question I had was for the housing portfolio holder. We increased the garage rents, and you've got your HRA outturn on page 3. What impact has hiking the garage rates for residents in Wellington had, or not just Wellington, but places like Wellington? Because I believe your income for garages has actually decreased when you increase the rent. So if the Cabinet member could explain what's happening with the garages, and if she's going to reverse the hiking rents, that's actually caused a reduction in income. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Cole.
Thank you. I clarified this at the time. It's actually a backward-looking report, so the report that was in the Cabinet papers was from before we actually changed the costing. So if you want the numbers, I can get accurate numbers sent to you up to date, but the ones that you're referring to, actually the garage charges hadn't been changed before that report, the time frame that the report is reflective of.
Thank you. Another question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is actually the leader just mentioned this, the flexibility to flex between projects, which Councillor Wilson said was a great thing in order to move projects forward. Can the leader explain how that means we won't lose things like a flood relief project, which I believe are really important, and you've given the flexibility, you can actually not do the flooding project if we're not careful. And given the tragedies we've had over the last few weeks with flooding around the world, we really need the Nick Town Centre protected with that £1 million scheme. So can the leader reassure us that in flexing the budgets, we still maintain the £1 million flood project for the town centre?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'm afraid I'm about to disappoint Councillor Conway because the flood alleviation scheme has been decommissioned, because the money that was set aside, £1 million, actually works out that it will not provide the flood alleviation measures that would be necessary to completely remove the town centre from the extreme flood zones, and this has been the case for some time. So that money has been reallocated to other regeneration projects, and I'll say why, Mr Mayor, because when we've had the modelling come back, it actually forecasts that all the other tinkering around which has been suggested won't actually alleviate the problems we were going to face. The solution which has come back from the experts is to build a new reservoir. And the site which was identified for a potential new reservoir was Whittleford Park. So we face, even if we could find the funding, Mr Mayor, which would be in excess of £10 million, I would guess, but at this point in time, because we were given a figure of about 9 million about a year ago when it was first mooted, we would lose one of our new destination parks in Whittleford Park and a service which a lot of the residents of Stockingford, Galley Common, Camp Hill all rely on as a vital local service. So that is a non-starter, and also the fact that even if you build the thing, you've then got to run the thing, Mr Mayor. That would put an intolerable pressure on the general fund to run a reservoir as it needs to be run moving forwards. What we have had the benefit of, Mr Mayor, as part of the flood alleviation works, is that a lot of the original mapping of the flood zones has now changed. So a lot of the flood zones were back to the 1970s, 1980s, before a lot of all the other work which was done over the years. And a lot of the insurance companies have been relying on those outdated maps. And we have now seen that a number of those areas which were at risk are no longer at risk or have moved from high risk to manageable risk. This means that their insurance premiums and ability to even get insurance is now significantly improved by the work that we have done. So we have to prioritise what we can do, Mr Mayor, and as Councillor Croft said, we can't just throw money at a situation. £1 million would be, ironically enough, a drop in the ocean compared to what we actually need to do to get that reservoir, and we can actually direct that money to things which have a tangible benefit to the residents of Nuneaton and Redwood in the other regeneration projects to get over the inflationary pressures we are facing, because if we don't, we would have to borrow that money, and Councillor Condacourt is already throwing scorn at us for trying to borrow money to regenerate projects and areas of our towns, Mr Mayor. So he can't have it both ways. We either put the money to the area of greatest need, or we fritter it away down the drain to something which won't work in the end. So I think we've made the most sensible, logical and productive decision we can.
Thank you, Councillor Dawson. Do you have more questions, Councillor Condacourt? I may ask how many more?
I think this might be the last one.
Thank you, Mayor.
On page 7, this is capital monitoring, which we'll talk about later. I assume it's Councillor Croft said the capital project is currently fully funded in its present form. Can Councillor Croft explicitly say which things are in that current form, i.e. cinema, activity centre, bridge to living? Thank you.
Councillor Condacourt.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'd rather think Councillor Condacourt to come on the horse. I have just told him that we are reviewing the capital programme and presenting an updated capital programme as it is. And I'm not going to sort of, on the hoop, make commitments as to which projects will be amended or altered or whatnot. So I'm going to refer him to the change we will bring when we have made that assessment and then we've made our decision that we're going to bring forward for council's approval.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any other questions from members? No, I see no more questions. Thank you very much. We move forward to item number 10. Recommendations from Cabinet and any other committees. Bear with me. So we have item 10A, Employment Code of Conduct, recommended changes by the external auditor. Pass that on to Councillor Baxter Payne, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to move these recommendations. The recommendations come from the External Auditor's Report presented to the Audit Standards Committee on the 31st of January this year. It was noted by the external auditors that a review was taken around the governance arrangements for managing gifts and hospitality of members of staff, by members of staff. The recommendation is that this be changed and a central register of these declarations of interest be held by the council and published on the council's website. This is a review by the external auditors, so I'm happy to move this recommendation, as I believe that the external auditors are best placed to recommend how we governance moving forward. Following on from last night's Employment Committee, I'm also happy to accept the change recommended by the Employment Committee last night, that at point 5b10d of the report as printed in the agenda, it be amended to read that the Council will hold and maintain a record of all employee declarations with proper confidentiality and will publish employee declarations on the Council website at head of service level or above. I'm happy to take questions later.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have a second for that, please? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second that and reserve my right to speak should it do this.
Thank you, Councillor. I shall open up the debate. Any councillor wish to comment or ask a question? Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, this is a very good idea, as I'm sure you will expect me to say. Obviously, members make the decisions, members are the decision-making people in this council, but a lot of their advice is shaped by officers, so it's entirely appropriate that we keep a proper register of any declarations that officers have to make. Just to explain the part of the Employment Committee last night, we noticed that the way the report was originally worded, we had to publish all of our officers' declarations, which isn't hugely fair on very sort of junior clerks or bin men if they were timeshare or something, or any minor declaration. Taking a job like that, you don't expect to have your name splashed around the place. So while the register will be kept centrally and confidentially, it's only those officers who make the strategic decisions that will be published. So that's our thinking.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wish to make a comment? Right. Councillor Condicorn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really pleased about that last change because I brought up at the Audit Committee that people in a relatively junior role who aren't taking decisions could actually end up having to publish stuff. That may be a Freemason and end up emptying the bins. So that's really good. One thing that would be useful is if members had the same rules as senior members of staff. The secret societies and that bit, some members do declare they are members, but I think it would be good if that's a universal thing. And the other thing is, I'm very worried about, on page 45, investigations by the monitoring officer, because I'm concerned that the monitoring officer instructs employees under these things to drive any requirements made by the monitoring officer. And I think that's a very strong step to say, if the monitoring officer wants to do X, Y, or Z, the employee has to obey exactly what the monitoring officer says. I think there needs to be the word reasonable or something in there, so that actually, or fair, so that actually members of staff aren't used to unfairly take part in complaints against members of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Condicorn. Any other member? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If it was relevant, I would declare that I'm a member of the Tiddly Women's Club, but I'm not. How far do we take this, Mr. Mayor? I mean, people are entitled to have a private life. Outside of this chamber, we are private individuals. We have the right to be a member of any club we want, so long as it is legal, it doesn't hurt anyone, it doesn't break any laws, and people are quite capable of making a reasonable, rational decision on their own without being instructed by some higher power, the Grand Wizard, the Grand Moff, whoever. I'm pretty sure they are able to do that without a secret handshake, Mr. Mayor. So yet again, Councillor Condicorn is trying to set hares racing and chasing shadows where nothing exists. In terms of the monitoring officer would only usually instruct anyone if it was a legal requirement to do so as part of their monitoring officer duties. Instructing someone to do something in that vein would not have anything to do with a complaint against a member. That is quite rightly kept at a senior level by the monitoring officer, the independent members who have to look at these things, and then the respective standards committee hearing if necessary. So yet again, we are seeing these shadows being created in the dark, Mr. Mayor, to frighten people where actually nothing is going wrong. And that is what we need to get across, Mr. Mayor, to the public, that this is just yet again another attempt at the politics of fear to frighten people to believe in the boogeyman where it isn't there. The reforms that we have before us are eminently sensible, and there is no reason not to support them. What secret clubs is he a member of, Mr. Mayor? I don't know, because it's a secret.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other questions? Councillor Brown, would you like to speak on the matter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing further to add. I think Councillor Wilson summed it very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Baxter-Payne? In which case I shall take that to a vote. All in favour? Against?
I think you record my vote, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, indeed. Abstention? Abstentions? In which case that is carried. Thank you. We move forward to item 10B, recommendations from the CRWP. Can I ask Councillor Baxter-Payne, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, again. I'm happy to move the recommendations set out in this part of the agenda. These changes to the Council's constitution are designed to make the Council's constitution suit better the structure of the current Council from the changes that we've made, should enable the Council to run in a more streamlined and more efficient manner, remove some of the idiosyncrasies of the current constitution, where we have to hold a committee to defer an item, or one item on the committee, where the planning committee has to come in to do it, and should bring forward some changes that will hopefully move the Council forward. The changes that we recommended came from the Constitution Working Party review, and I have to say that there's general consensus to all the changes listed in this agenda, and it was a pleasure to work with it because we didn't always agree on the things that we put forward, but we came to a conclusion and we made a solution that suited all. So I'm happy to move these and I'll take questions later.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter-Payne. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Markham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a member of the Working Party, I'm happy to second this and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Markham. Open it up for debate. Any councillor? Councillor Condacall.
Mr. Mayor, there are clearly some improvements that are welcome in these changes, but there are also some things that are not welcome. And there's some things that really want tweaking a bit. And it's most disappointing that the Greens have no seat on the Working Party, even as observers, and we can't see the minutes or notes from the Working Party. There are a few areas that really concern me, particularly around the complaint procedure, where, as many people will know, I'm quite expert. And I think there needs to be some balance in the procedure, because otherwise I will just get to a record number of complaints and no other person will ever get a complaint against them upheld. So I do think there needs to be some checks and balances. I say there is stuff to welcome in here. I did notice when we did the calling of the Civic Hall, for example, that Councillor Shepherd was able to take part in the debate and not vote. And I think that's a very welcome step to have more people take part. But unfortunately, yet again, of course, the Green Party can't do callings because there's only two of us at the moment. And therefore, we don't get that advantage. So I think we need to allow us to sign callings after they've been submitted to agree with the calling if we're interested, or some mechanism to make a level playing field. So this very useful right of non-voting attendees at scrutiny on an issue can include the Green Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Condacall. Councillor Baxter-Payne, would you like to respond? Or Councillor Wilson? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, is there any other? Sorry, Councillor Beaton, sorry, I apologise. Slipped in there.
Yeah, fully supportive of the working group's recommendations. I think the solution that Councillor Condacall is looking for is a Green Party to get more seats at the election. So I think that's what you should probably focus on.
Thank you, Councillor Beaton. Any other councillor? Councillor Mark.
Thank you. I don't believe there's anything else that's been said.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter-Payne.
I'll just make a quick observation. from most overview and scrutiny panels that I've attended, Councillor Conagle always speaks. And I've even let him come back in on occasions. I've even let him have a second question. So his right to speak is always there. So why he thinks that he doesn't have one, I don't know. Or if you need to call him, maybe you should learn to talk to different college members in this chamber in a different way, and members might actually sign the calling with you.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. In which case I shall take that to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Indeed. Any abstentions? In which case that is carried. Thank you. We move forward to item 10C, statement of community involvement. And I move that forward to Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Statement of Community Involvement, or SCI, as I refer to it, sets out how we consult whilst preparing and revising planning policy documents, as well as how we consult on planning applications. A full comprehensive review of this document has not been carried out since 2010. So to make sure all legislative requirements are being met, the SCI has now undergone a full review. The main changes to the SCI are that it's been reordered to clearly set out the consultation process stage by stage. Also, all the regulations have now been set out in plain English so that our requirements are clear for everyone to read. In addition to the main changes, new sections have also been added setting out how we'll consult on applications for listed buildings and applications affecting the setting of listed buildings. The version of the SCI before Council tonight has been updated slightly from that presented to Cabinet to correct a couple of inaccuracies kindly highlighted at the Cabinet meeting by Mrs. Condicourt from the Gallery. The reference to CCGs, or Clinical Commission Groups, has been updated to the new title of ICBs, or Integrated Care Boards, and the reference to Local Enterprise Partnership has been deleted, as they will soon cease to exist. So I move the report, and the recommendation is as printed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do I have a second of that? Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second this report and reserve my right to speak to it again, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, in which case I shall open it up to the floor. Councillor Condicourt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks first to Councillor Smith for actually accepting those changes. I know he got off on a bit of a wrong foot the last time it went to Cabinet, but it's really good to have accepted that those names are out of date and those bodies have been closed and new bodies created. There are obviously some improvements to this planning document, community involvement, but we still don't go far enough. And one thing that's greatly frustrating is that inexperienced members of the public really have difficulty in getting planners to take on board some of their arguments, particularly when there was changes to the local plans, supplementary planning documents. So we have planning documents on various things like parking and cycling, etc. And it's very complicated for the public to navigate, but the planning officers still are not always taking on board comments and tying with those supplementary documents. Planning is really complicated. I don't have a degree in it, but I've been doing it for about 18 years. And it's really hard for the public to get involved. And they actually very quickly have to become experts. So the thing we need to do in the state community involvement is get them notified early, so they don't just have the 21 days with minus a day until they find out. And we need to improve the website a lot. A lot of the state community involvement now goes through the website. And we put planning things out on the weekly list, and quite often the documents aren't there. And then there's all these things saying we've got 21 days. And then you can't link to a document. So if you find, say, the highway assessment or I was looking the other day at the sewage assessments about the top farm application. That document, you cannot do a link to it. The website was really, really awkward. And quite often the documents there just have numbers. Yeah, it's drawing 1 or whatever. So the more we can do to make the system friendly, and it's almost like you want they used to have people come to the town and do a walk around and give you feedback. Once we're going on our planning system with a total novice to be told, so it's getting planned next year, go and find the application, find the document, and try and make the system work better. So it's half there, and hopefully the new website will help. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corn. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've looked at this report extensively, and of course I will support the recommendations in it tonight, but I wanted to make some small nitty-gritty points, if I may. First of all, with respect to the council's planning portal, which I'm sure all of us as councillors use on a weekly basis, you can now start to see the improvements that have been made to that portal. I feel that it's far more easier to use, and it certainly has improved over the last few years. On a point about site notices, which I understand that we still have a statutory responsibility to put up on street lights, lampposts, etc. If the cabinet member could just take the comment on board that I wish the planning department could attach those notices onto those assets with some slightly stronger material, because the local use often tear them off within a matter of hours. I hope that comment can be passed on. And the other final comment I wanted to make was respect to drop concessions as referenced on page 81 of the report. I've often felt that the council-led drop concessions that were done with the borough plan, especially the one at the Woodlands, has always been well attended, and it's actually been very engaging from the planning department. But we are starting to see, as the borough plan emerges, more drop-in sessions from planning lobbyists. So the likes of Bowway, Cartwrights there, hiring planning lobbyists to do drop-in sessions in local communities. My experience from the last one in Bedford Heath, with respect to the Bedford Woodlands application, was that there were some of these individuals from whichever company was representing the applicant were often peddling some very deep mistruths about the council's policies. In particular, I'm not going to reference the name of the company, but they were telling residents in Bedworth that it was the council that went to the applicant saying put the Woodlands application in, when actually that simply wasn't the case. So my comment would be, as part of this, could we look at actually sending a planning officer to some of these privately held drop-in sessions to make sure that actually the council's position is defended and that residents aren't being lied to?
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is an occasion where I will have some sympathy with Councillor Concord, because he is right. The website is internally difficult to actually try and navigate at times. I think all of us as councillors have experienced that, and that is precisely why we're taking this opportunity to, as we are having an enforced refresh, because our previous provider is no longer going to provide it for us, and as Councillor Concord has seen from various cabinet papers, because it is a spend pressure, much to the annoyance of my friend, the portfolio holder for finance, we are having discussions with officers to see how we can make it as click-friendly as possible. So rather than having to click 10 times to try and find something, if we can try and make it as intuitive as possible. And I'm not saying it will be perfect, because no website is ever perfect. We will do so. And I do also have sympathy about the planning portal, because I remember Councillor Evans many years ago, when we were in opposition, lamenting, complaining and demanding actually that there were some amendments to the new software which was brought in under the previous administration. Because I do agree, it can be difficult to try and find an application, then put the number in, then, as Councillor Concord says, actually get the documents that you want or link to the documents. That has proved frustrating for myself as a local ward member, and I'm sure other members have encountered that at times. If it is possible to do so as part of the website refresh, we will make every endeavour to do so. I can't give a cast iron guarantee, Mr. Mayor, because it depends on what the IT is capable of doing, and also, to be quite honest, the amount of cash we have available. If you spend millions, you'll get an all singing, all dancing website. We aren't in the position of having millions to spend on that all singing, all dancing website. But where we can make user improvements, we will endeavour to do that, and we are trying to do that. Because myself and Councillor Croft have had those discussions with Mr. Charlotte and looking at various different options for what the front page could look like and how we use tiles, etc. To try and make it more visually appealing and something which signposts more to the residents. Because we do get lost in council speak, we're all guilty of it. For example, the name, the statement of community involvement, doesn't exactly trip off the tongue. I will admit residents wouldn't necessarily know what that means, but at least if we can find it more easy to signpost towards planning on the front page, they will stand more of a chance of finding the phrase statement of community involvement. So I think everyone will share that pain, and it is something we are trying our best to rectify. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any other members wish to speak? In which case I fully endorse the improvements, certainly on the planning portal, because it is very difficult to negotiate, and particularly to find the actual document you want without having to open 10 before you get to that point. So yes, I would agree with that, and we welcome obviously improvements with other purposes. Thank you very much. Councillor Brown, do you wish to say any more?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not really, just to echo many of the things that have already been said about the difficulties of navigating the existing system, and I really look forward to hopefully a much better experience in the future. But I entirely welcome this report, and the fact that it's refreshed the bodies that we have to deal with and consult with, brought up to date. They say many of these have not been looked at for a decade or more, in much the same way as the outside bodies we appoint councillors to, which until recently included charities that no longer exist. So I can wholeheartedly recommend this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. Councillor Condor is actually quite right. Planning is complex, very difficult for residents to understand. But I can assure you that any residents' submissions are looked at in detail, they are taken account of, and we have a record of how they're responding to within the plan. In fact, we didn't have to, but we ran an extra consultation on the borough plan specifically so we could look at residents' views and take them into account. And it has helped shape the plan as it's developed. I think Councillor Wilson's pretty much covered the website, but within planning we are looking how we can improve what we can do with the current website whilst we wait for things to improve in terms of changing the whole thing. So it is improving, we are making moves to improve. Councillor Evans, thank you for your comment on street furniture. I will pass that on. We will make sure that those signs are fixed fairly firmly. And I do recollect the developer drop-in session that you mentioned. In fact, I was there at the same time as you were, and I stayed for several hours. Unfortunately, we can't control what the developers do, and with the planning system under such pressure to deliver, it's very difficult to give officers time out to go to every drop-in session. But I personally do attend them where I can, and I do field some of those questions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. In which case I shall move that to a vote. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? And abstentions? Thank you. That is carried. We move forward to item 10D, the capital outing for 2022 to 2023. I will pass that to Councillor Croft. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is the first of two capital reports we're doing to Council this evening. This is the backward-looking report to the previous financial year, which closed at the end of March, and I presented to Cabinet in July. The headline figures on that are that we were underspent last year, 3.8 million on general funds and 1.5 million on the housing revenue account. The reason for that we've already touched upon this evening, which is project slippage. The only major overspend that I did want to highlight is that it was on disabled facilities grants, and Mr. Mayor, if we are going to overspend somewhere, it ought to be on a worthy cause such as that, and we will reflect that in our budgeting in future. But I have very little to add compared to the Cabinet and the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. I'll have a second of that, please. Thank you, Councillor Gould. In which case I open up to the floor. Councillor Condon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really confusing having two capital reports on the same night, but it's really interesting as well. We have a lot of things in the first version, which is on page 107, which are then changed in the second version later on tonight on page 169. And we're being asked, actually, if you read the agenda tonight, to approve the details in Appendix 2 of the first report, which is effectively approving things like Grayson Place Phase 1 and 2, whereas the second report says Grayson Place Part 2 is effectively paused until next year. And there's been things snuck in the second version that aren't in the first version. There's a whole load of issues about this capital programme. And when I was a county councillor, and even now, if you look at the county council capital thing, there is a massive spreadsheet. It tells you the cost of the project, how much has been spent in previous years, how much is being spent this year, both budgeted and expected, and then how much in future years. It's a lovely spreadsheet to see exactly what's going on. This is absolutely useless because we only see a little slit of expenditure in that 12-month period. And so I want to put an amendment in to what's printed in the agenda. I think on item 10D, we need to change the recommendation to read that the updated capital budget for 2023-24, alongside the latest multi-year capital programme, are presented to the next normal or extraordinary council meeting for consideration. And I've asked Penny to type that out. So that's actually amending what we're being asked to vote on page 5, to actually move this till the next full council, which I think will be an extraordinary one in November, so we can actually have a look at the changes and the items, and actually vote on a capital programme that's actually really what we're going to do. Because you're asking us to approve spending money on Grayson Place Part 2, and then later on you're saying we're not spending it. We need clarity, and I think taking this forward to the next meeting, and actually having a capital programme that's actually a real capital programme, rather than lots of things added, lots of things taken out, would be a lot better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condon. I'll give time for the people to pass around the amendment in the first instance. Are there any other member wishing to speak at time? Oh, sorry. I need a second for that amendment. Thank you, Councillor. You give us opportunity to look at that amendment. you. Councillor Condacott, I will open up to the floor. Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Condacor's sense of the absurd has not failed him. Unfortunately, the sense of self-awareness has. It is tedious and it is somewhat absurd that we have to bring the two reports in succession like this. Ideally, the outcome will come to the July Council. The reason the first report has come to Council is because we have to approve, should Council put it that way, the rollover of the underspend into this financial year. The second report, if we, and for the time is linear, is at the end of Q1, allows us to make adjustments in year, and it's unfortunate the reports have come so late. And he talks about the things that are very difficult to read. They're so difficult to read, Mr. Mayor, that even he found it. So I'm afraid we are not going. I'm certainly not going to vote for this. It is an unfortunate procedural necessity that we have to approve the rollover and then approve amendments in year to the programme. But there it is. That's the way the council works. And I'm afraid we would like him to know what his option is.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Any other comments? And can I take it from what your response is that we are following appropriate procedure? Thank you, Councillor Croft. If there's no other councillor wishing to speak, I will take a vote on that. We will then vote for the amendment as you have in front of you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Condacott.
Can I take a recorded vote on that, please?
Is that appropriate? In which case we need 5 people to approve a recorded vote. Appropriately then. In which case, yes, we'll take a recorded vote. Thank you, councillors. Those for the amendment, as and counts and yes, we'll read out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to clarify, this vote is on the amendment proposed. Could Council please indicate whether they're for the amendment, against the amendment, or they wish to abstain when I read their names? Councillor Baxter Payne.
Against.
Councillor Beetham.
Against.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Kane.
Against.
Councillor Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cooper.
Against.
Councillor Coventry Morton. Councillor Croft.
Against.
Councillor Koletovich.
Against.
Councillor Downs.
Against.
Councillor Evans.
Against.
Councillor Golby.
Against.
Councillor Green.
Against.
Councillor Goodrich. Councillor Hammersley.
Against.
Councillor Harbison.
Against.
Councillor Condacott.
For.
Councillor Markham.
Against.
Councillor Morton.
Against.
Councillor Pandare.
Against.
Councillor Neil Phillips is Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Shiners. Councillor Singh.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor M. Tromans.
Against.
Councillor R. Tromans.
Against.
Councillor Walsh.
Against.
Councillor Watkins.
Abstain.
Councillor Wilson.
Against.
And Councillor Wright.
For.
Lost.
That amendment is lost. Shall we go back to the original proposal? In which case we'll take a vote on that. Those for? Thank you. Those against? And those are abstentions. Councillor Watkins?
This is on what?
This is on the original proposal. In in which case the original proposal is carried. Thank you. We move on to item 10E, the annual treasury report. Sorry, Councillor Gosseridge.
Mr Mayor, can I just have some clarification, because a member of the public has left the gallery and there is a camera running. I wondered who was looking after it, please.
Do we know is that camera still running? If not, Councillor Condacor.
Mr Mayor, my wife started that camera running and I will take it down at the end, or one of the public can look after it, but given that the council is not recording this properly, it seems useful to have a backup copy.
Councillor Condacor, the council is recording this properly, it is just not being live streamed at this moment in time. And as the member of the public has left the chamber, appreciate if the camera is please turned off. And I'll give you opportunity to do so.
Mr Mayor.